in the final act of my life, as I looked into the greedy sparkle in the eyes of my children, waiting impatiently by my bedside for my last breath, I resolved to begin the bitter yet necessary play I had prepared. A lesson far more valuable than money or property, one they would never forget. In the twilight of my life, the grand house my late husband and I had built, brick by brick with our sweat and dreams, for children who would one day fill it with laughter, for grandchildren who would grow up playing in the garden, now stood as nothing more than walls steeped in memories, echoing with silence. The two dearest souls for whom we had sacrificed days and nights, working tirelessly to ensure they had the very best of everything, had long since lost themselves in the chaos of their own lives and endless material ambitions. To this frail old mother of theirs, they only came when their pockets were empty, or at best on Christmas or Easter, and even then only out of duty. The doctor's merciless words declaring that I was in the autumn of my days stabbed me like a dagger at first, yet soon I came to see that this inevitable ending offered me a divine opportunity, the chance to witness the true faces of my children who had grown so accustomed to taking that they had forgotten what it meant to give, to show loyalty or to cherish. When with a trembling voice I called them both and told my time was near, the false cries of, "Oh dear Mum," on the phone barely concealed the truth. I could feel them already calculating how quickly they might divide what remained of their father's estate. At that moment I knew with certainty that the harsh lesson I had prepared was both just and necessary. They swept into the house as if in mourning, playing the role of the world's most devoted children. Kneeling at my bedside, they embraced me with crocodile tears, but behind those tears their eyes weighed not my soul, but the value of my possessions. That look alone was enough to shatter the last fragile remnants of hope I had carried within me. For the woman who had stayed awake through countless nights at the smallest of their illnesses, who had postponed her own dreams again and again for their happiness, who had surrendered the best years of her youth for their future, now to lie here in her deathbed, overshadowed by their indifference and endless worldly concerns, was a cruel reminder that motherhood is the purest form of sacrifice, and often the most unreciprocated. Before I had even drawn my last breath, I heard with my own ears my children quarreling in the kitchen of this very home I had spent my life building to keep them safe, over who would claim the largest share of my estate. That sound seared into me a bitter truth. No heartbreak could surpass the disappointment of a mother's love betrayed. It was then I called upon Mr. Martin, our loyal solicitor and my late husband's closest confidant. What I asked of him was not merely to prepare a legal document, but to be the trusted witness of my conscience, to ensure that on the final day, when justice would come to pass, my children would receive the lesson of their lives. Summoning the last of my strength, I reached beneath my pillow and handed him the sealed envelope. Inside it lay not only an inventory of my estate, but also a testament to their moral bankruptcy. Looking into my children's eyes one last time, I knew that what they thought was a farewell was in truth the prelude to the greatest shock of their lives, a new beginning cloaked in the guise of an ending. After my solicitor had taken that fateful envelope away, each passing second of the wait felt like an eternity. I lay in my bed, silently enduring, waiting for the right moment for my plan to unfold. All the while, my children prowled around me like vultures, already treating this sacred home of mine as though it belonged to them, their eyes fixed on my final breath. Each glance drained away the last traces of mercy left in my heart. My daughter, lost in daydreams of her holiday with her dearest friend, could not even place a glass of water in my hand. She simply left it on a distant table, too absorbed in her own pleasures to see the suffering of her dying mother. These seemingly small acts, cutting deeper than any knife, revealed the hardness of her heart and how her selfishness had grown stronger than the simplest human duties. And my son, my firstborn, once the light of my life, already spoke shamelessly of tearing down these walls that cradled my memories, reshaping this home of mine to fit his own whims. To hear such words while I still lived was proof enough that I could not leave to them my legacy, my past, nor even my very being. In those bleak days, I found unexpected comfort in the kindness of Nurse Alice, an angel-hearted soul recommended by Mr. Martin, my solicitor, and the closest confidant of my late husband. From her I received the tenderness and care my own children had long ceased to show me. Her presence gave me the strength to carry on, proof that in my pursuit of justice I was not entirely alone. And so the moment arrived. As I played the final scene of the grand theater of my life, I closed my eyes, imprinting forever in my memory the cruel hunger etched on my children's faces. But what they believed to be an ending was in truth the beginning of the harshest lesson they would ever endure. Through the thin white veil covering my face, I saw it, the fleeting, triumphant glance they exchanged in the moment before their false tears began to flow, an unspoken, "At last it's over, now we are rich." That single look was enough to remind me that, however merciless my scheme, it was both just and necessary. I drifted from my home like a ghost, leaving behind not only wealth, but the countless treasures of unconditional love and sacrifice they had never once recognized. The walls of that dark house stood silent witnesses to all I had given, and all they had squandered. When I learned from Mr. Martin that my insatiable children had chosen the cheapest coffin for me, begrudging even the cost of a proper farewell, I understood that in their eyes my worth was less than the wood that would hold my body. Through the secret photographs taken by Mr. Martin's assistant, I watched my own funeral. The empty chairs, the hollow grief painted across my children's faces, all revealed not the poverty of my life, but the poverty of their souls, the emptiness of their consciences. This sight, painful as it was, gave me the final strength to see my plan through to the very end. And when, not even days after my burial, I heard they had raised champagne glasses in my home, celebrating the life of luxury they believed my absence had granted them, every last shred of maternal affection within me vanished. In its place rose a colder, greater force, a relentless justice, determined to teach them not only the meaning of money, but of morality and conscience itself. The ink on the legal papers had barely dried, yet already I heard how my children descended upon the fortune I had built over a lifetime, claiming it recklessly as though it were their own. Their arrogance at the promise of wealth soon dragged them into debts and folly, proving once again how estranged they had become not only from respect for me, but from the sweat, labor, and memories bound up in every penny. Even as they hounded my faithful friend, Mr. Martin, calling him day after day with their insatiable demands, he maintained a calm and professional composure. Yet behind that mask, I knew he was carefully enacting one of the most crucial parts of my plan, to raise their expectations to their very peak, so that their fall would be all the more crushing and unforgettable. In the quiet of those lonely nights, as I looked at photographs from innocent days long past, I wept not for the two strangers who now caused me such pain, but for the children they had once been, bright, tender, and full of promise, children I could never bring back. This grief reminded me that, however necessary my choice, for a mother's heart it was still a burden heavy beyond words. When at last Mr. Martin made the expected call to say that all was ready and the day of reckoning had arrived, the tangled knot of sorrow, anger, and disappointment within me seemed to unravel. In its place rose an unwavering resolve. I would administer to my children the bitter medicine of truth, and they would swallow it without escape. And so the great day came. I pictured them entering that grand meeting room, dressed in their finest clothes, their smiles bright with the fantasies of imminent wealth. They did not yet know that what they had entered was no gateway to fortune, but a tribunal of their own making, a chamber where they would be judged by the ruins of their greed and callousness. Mr. Martin later told me that the atmosphere in that room was thick with avarice, so strong one could almost touch it. The scent of expensive perfume mingled with an arrogance in their posture, a mocking pride in their eyes, as though they were rehearsing the spoiled futures they believed awaited them. The first and most merciless step of my plan was the false will I had asked Mr. Martin to read aloud. It was designed to inflate their egos and intoxicate them with a false sense of triumph. For the higher one is lifted, the harder and more devastating the fall when truth finally strikes. And then it came, a single word, so simple, yet so devastating. However, When it fell from Mr. Martin's lips, it was as though a cold wind swept through the room, tearing apart their illusion. That word was the herald of the revelation to come, the truth that would freeze every dream they had nurtured. When the lines were read, the words declaring that everything I had earned in life was not to go to those who had dismissed and betrayed me, but instead to abandoned and forgotten mothers and fathers who had suffered the same fate, I knew it was more than the transfer of an estate. It was the heaviest and most enduring mark ever struck upon their consciences. Of course, I had foreseen their denials, their rage, their pitiful protests, and that was why I held one final weapon, the most unassailable of all. It was the truth itself, naked and undeniable, a force that would crush not only their legal claims, but their moral standing, silencing them forever with a shame they would carry to their graves. As Mr. Martin later described it, the moment their dead mother appeared before them in full life, time seemed to freeze inside that grand meeting room. The arrogant expressions on my children's faces shattered in an instant, replaced by sheer terror, weighed down by the sum of every betrayal and ungrateful act they had committed. With my very first words, I wasted no breath on explanations, nor on declaring my hatred. Instead, I spoke sharply, directing my words straight into the dark corridors of their hypocrisy. Those cutting lines struck the first and hardest blow, forcing them to realize that I had known of their false mourning and selfishness all along, and that I had written the rules of this game from the very beginning. One by one, like reading out charges in a court of law, I recounted the indignities, cruelties, and disrespect they had shown me in the days they believed I was on my deathbed. My voice was calm but unyielding. My aim was not only to show them how miserably they had failed as children, but also to confront them with the brutal truth of how greed and money can turn a human being into something monstrous. And then I told them that I had not sought to destroy them, but to give them the greatest gift of all, the chance to rebuild themselves, stripped of their illusions of wealth, to rediscover their character and conscience. In that moment, I understood that my role as their mother was not simply to bear and feed them, but even at the end of my journey, to guide them through the hardest, most necessary lesson of their lives. When the final act of my plan closed, I left them not millions, but a rusted key and faded photographs, symbols of the innocence they had lost. Through these, I showed them that the true inheritance worth chasing was not property or wealth, but an honorable name and memories remembered with love. It was the harshest and most unforgettable lesson I could give. I imagined them leaving that house, once the center of their imagined riches, carrying nothing but cardboard boxes filled with scraps of childhood memories. And in that painful moment, perhaps for the first time, they understood that the walls they had dismissed as stone were in truth a sanctuary of unconditional love, a home they themselves had torn down with their greed, When Mr. Martin later reported that those two, who had never worked a day in their lives, had begun to learn the value of money by earning modest wages, eating not in fine restaurants, but in a workman's canteen, I felt a bittersweet satisfaction. My lesson, though harsh, had not been a punishment, but the foundation for rebuilding their character. In a world where my own blood sought to erase my name, to see the first stones laid for a home of mercy that would bear my family's name showed me what true immortality meant. It was not leaving behind ungrateful children, but offering comfort and hope to strangers who shared my fate. When I heard that my children, once bitter rivals whose only bond had been my inheritance, now sat on a park bench sharing a simple sandwich, having found again the thread of genuine siblinghood amidst hardship, I realized my plan had borne its most precious fruit, one I had scarcely dared to imagine. At last, I understood. A mother's greatest duty is not to leave her children wealth, but to leave them the lesson of an honorable life. And having fulfilled that duty, I finally found the treasure I had sought all my life, not money, but the pure love and unconditional respect of the new family I had chosen, bound not by blood, but by fate. At the end of this journey, I came to understand that family is not a duty born of blood, but a loyalty chosen by the heart. For in my final days, it was the presence of these good people who gave me the warmth of a true home, teaching me that a stranger who holds your hand in hardship can be far more of a family than a child who stabs you in the back in times of ease. When I read the brief note from my children, containing no request for money, no reproach, only words of regret and acceptance, I felt the last fragments of anger dissolve within me. For in that moment, I understood. My triumph was not in destroying them, but in helping them rise again from the ashes of their mistakes, this time as better human beings. Life, I realized, rests on the simplest of foundations. Those who trample others in their pride will in the end be alone, while those who lift the fallen will always win a heart. That it took me a whole lifetime to teach my children this moral law, something even a child instinctively knows, was the greatest irony of all. Without the steadfast loyalty of my dear friend Mr. Martin, who stood beside me not only with his legal knowledge, but with his conscience, I could never have turned my suffering into such a meaningful legacy. Through him, I was reminded again that the truest wealth in life is not found in bank accounts, but in the friendships that believe in you and stand by you even in your darkest hour. Thus, the dark tale that began with my children's betrayal and carried me to the edge of a lonely death became, unexpectedly, a testament that sometimes one must tear down everything old to build something better, and that the greatest inheritance one can leave is not vaults of gold, but a lesson hard won, consciences repaired, and an honorable name remembered with love. After the bitter days when my children saw me only as a burden to be rid of, a signature on a will, I discovered within these walls that simply asking a forgotten soul their name can remind them they still belong in this world. Having long forgotten the poison of hollow, mocking laughter that once echoed in the shadows of wealth and arrogance, I now witnessed within these walls the pure, innocent laughter born of shared memories and true friendship. And I learned that the soul is not nourished by champagne glasses, but by the unique music of a genuine laugh shared together. I knew too well the ache of empty chairs around the grand dining table in my former home, chairs left vacant because my children never came. That is why when I now saw another's silent grief, I realized the greatest comfort is not clever words, but simply filling that unbearable emptiness with your presence and sharing their pain in silence. All my life, I believed my children would carry my name, only to watch the seeds of love I planted in them rot away. Yet now in this small patch of earth, I saw how every seed, tended only with water and sunlight, grew back in gratitude and truth. It whispered to me that true inheritance is not in blood, but in the honest bond between labor, soil, and devotion. And when I was freed from the shallow gaze of children who saw only the lines on my face as signs of age and death, I came to cherish them instead as noble medals, each line a sorrow endured, a storm weathered, a victory won. At last, I discovered the rarest peace, accepting that every mark had shaped me into the wise woman I had become. After children who asked me only where my bank accounts and deeds were kept, never once caring for the storms raging in my soul, I learned beneath this roof that the greatest treasure one person can give another is not bought with gold or silver, but is found in trust and in a listening ear free of judgment. Each time I looked at this kind-hearted young man who owned almost nothing by the world's standards, yet shared every little thing he had without hesitation, I saw how much richer he was than my children, who once had everything but gave nothing. I knew then that true wealth lies not in what is hoarded, but in the mercy that is freely given. Recalling my children's hurried visits, never lasting more than 5 minutes, their eyes fixed constantly on their watches, only sharpened the contrast. To see this boy give away the most precious treasure of his life, his time, with no thought of payment, reminded me again of the true meaning of loyalty and love. Where my children saw every sacrifice I had made as nothing more than their entitlement to my will, here I saw small acts of kindness, quiet debts of gratitude that no ledger recorded. And I realized that the ties which make us human are not of blood, but of hearts delicately bound together. After leaving behind the houses, the land, the money, I came to see that a person's true inheritance is neither deeds nor bank books. It is the stories lived, the memories passed on to the next generation, those priceless lessons that guide or simply bring a smile. News of my former life, streets I once knew by heart, doors I once wondered about, now reached me as though from a foreign world, one I no longer belonged to. And I realized that our roots are not in soil, but in the place where our spirit finds peace. In youth, each raindrop reminded me of sorrows and losses, wrapping my heart in melancholy. But now, I felt every drop against the window, not only washing the dust from the glass, but cleansing the last traces of bitterness and resentment from my heart. This was the greatest gift of age. Seeing those unhappy souls who spend their lives mourning what they once had but have now lost, I understood that the trap I had set for my children was not only for them, it had freed me as well, breaking forever the rusted chains of the past. And so I learned to be happy, not with what I owned, but with the moment I held in my hands. I once wasted years buying my children the most expensive, the most extravagant gifts in vain hopes of earning their love. Now, with this humble scarf I knit clumsily, dropping stitches as I go, I see the truth. The value of a gift is not in the label it bears, but in the time spent making it and in the drop of love woven into its threads. After I lost my life's companion, I spent years believing the greatest inheritance he had left me was the unbearable weight of grief. But now, whenever I look at his smiling photograph, I know the true legacy was not sorrow, but the art of living he taught me. Honesty, kindness, and labor. And I feel a rare peace in knowing I have carried that legacy to where it truly belongs, to those in need. Here, as I witnessed even the fiercest quarrels melt away over the warmth of a simple cup of tea, I understood more clearly how pitiful and hollow was the inheritance feud that had turned my children into sworn enemies. For true bonds live not in possessions, but in hearts that can forgive even when they are broken. Having lost all hope in my own children, I learned here that sometimes the greatest kindness is not to hurl a cruel truth at someone, but to walk beside them in their dream until they are ready to face it themselves. To be a companion rather than a judge is often the deeper mercy. After breaking free from a world where even good deeds were flaunted as vanity, I saw that the greatest benefactor is not the one who engraves his name on marble, but the one who plants a tiny seed of joy in another's heart. Mercy, I discovered, is not measured by applause, but by the quiet beating of a grateful soul. From a life where my children sent me nothing but bank slips and letters from solicitors, I now found myself giving voice to the tender words of another. And I felt deeply how words, brighter than jewels and sharper than blades, can wound or heal, and how a single sentence written with love can bring a festival of joy to a lonely spirit. Recalling the false, hollow atmosphere of my own staged funeral, I now stood witness to genuine tears and warm shared memories for another departed soul. And I learned that a person's true wealth is not the estate left behind, but the number of hearts that long for them in their absence. The calendar pages that once cut me like blades, reminders of phone calls never made, of birthdays never marked, had now become meaningless, for I had learned that time is a relative illusion. For a peaceful soul, every day is the same beautiful day, and the only true calendar is the one that flows within. In this modern age, where people rush to record life instead of living it, where they look into screens rather than into the eyes of their loved ones, I too use technology to stage the greatest deception of my life. But now, I sought only one technology to see the sincerity shining in another's eyes. Memory, I realized, is both the greatest gift and the heaviest burden. In the lives of those around me, I saw that sometimes the kindest act is not to force them to recall harsh truths, but to walk gently with them through the sweet lies and tender repetitions they choose to remember. When I saw that the innocent memories which once pierced me with unbearable pain no longer hurt me, I understood that the past can never be erased, but we need not let it steal today's peace. That refusal itself is the truest respect for one's own soul and the final declaration of freedom. Having wasted so much of my life trapped between the regrets of yesterday and the fears of tomorrow, I now felt something new. At the close of each day, I carried with me the peace of the hours just lived, and I awaited the promise of the day to come. For me, tomorrow was no longer a word of fear, but of childlike curiosity for a new dawn yet to be lived. Whenever I recall those grand restaurants where my children once took me to impress me with foreign dishes I could hardly pronounce, flavors that felt empty to my soul, I understood even more deeply how meaningless such extravagance was. For now, the scent of warm bread from this modest home's oven nourished not only my body, but also the most essential human need, the feeling of safety and belonging. As I remembered the days trapped in my son's fashionable car, ears assaulted by loud and soulless songs in languages I did not understand, I now heard the gentle crackle of an old record. Its familiar melodies slipped through the static like a balm to the deepest wounds of my spirit, whispering that the finest healer is time itself and the art it carries with it. After a lifetime spent starved for a moment of silence, buried under my children's endless demands, creditors' calls, and the world's deafening noise, I now cherish the peace of an afternoon nap beneath this roof, and I realize that the greatest luxury is not diamonds or estates, but sleep that comes with a clear conscience and a heart untroubled. From years of a cold life among people who gave affection with a price tag, whose every touch was false and every smile calculated, I now felt the unconditional love of a simple creature. This innocent animal, asking for neither shelter nor food in return, offered only instinctive closeness. In that love without judgment or expectation, I found the purest medicine for the soul. Looking back at my pitiful attempts to impress others with wealth and status, I now saw the truth. The joy on another's face at a clumsy joke spoken with empty pockets was worth far more. For real riches are not numbers in a bank account, but the waves of happiness you spread around you. I remembered the woman I once was, begging my children for a moment's attention whenever I was unwell, convinced my illnesses were the world's greatest tragedy. And I contrasted her with who I had become, a woman who, at the final stop of her journey, accepted her body's frailty and chose to spend her last strength in easing another's pain. In this, I found the greatest victory over death. From a world where my own death was seen only as a transfer of property, I now stood among people who mourned sincerely. Here, grief was not measured in quarrels over belongings, but in gratitude for the beauty a life had given, in stories told to keep that soul alive. I learned that death is not an ending, but an art of becoming a memory. Freed from the shallow fears of my youth, when I dreaded that my wealth would be wasted by others after my passing, and from the fears of old age, when I trembled at my children's ingratitude, I now saw death differently. On this final threshold, I understood it was neither punishment nor reward, but simply the most mysterious and inevitable station of the long journey we all must take. And I approached it not with fear, but with the curiosity of a traveler. Where once I grieved for joys I would never have, such as the love of grandchildren my children's selfishness denied me, I now found peace in a new strength, the ability to rejoice sincerely in another's happiness, as though it were my own. And in that moment, I understood that jealousy and envy are the heaviest chains on the soul, and true freedom lies in celebrating the joy of others. At last, when I had nothing left to prove, no battles to fight, no lessons left to teach, I saw the truth. Life's great equation ends in a simple answer. What matters is not how long you lived, nor how much you possessed, but what you left behind in the hearts of others. Was it a storm of anger and resentment, or a gentle breeze of gratitude and love, remembered with a smile? I came to see that the concrete walls of a great foundation bearing my name may one day crumble under the dust of time and neglect. Yet a small, imperfect scarf, knitted with love, or a fleeting, sincere moment shared between two souls can outlast monuments, living on as a story told across generations. True immortality lies not in grand works, but in quiet touches. After all the helpless days when even my vast fortune could not soften the hardness in my children's hearts, I discovered that a single tomato plucked from the soil by my own hand could bring a smile to a weary face. I learned that true power is not found in grand designs to change the world, but in the simplest acts that touch a single spirit. I once believed strength meant commanding others through wealth and power, but now, when I offered a helping hand to a young man at the start of his life, struggling through the hardest trial of his profession, I realized that such a gesture, given without judgment or complaint, was also healing me. Mercy is never one-sided. I began this journey driven by a thirst for vengeance for the pain my children had caused me. Yet at the final stop, I understood the greatest victory is not to conquer or to prove oneself right, but to tear out the anger and hatred from one's heart and to release the other's story from your own. And so, at last, I reached that sacred silence at the end of life's long and noisy road, when neither the regrets of the past nor the uncertainties of the future could disturb me. There I learned that the highest state a human being can reach is not wealth or triumph, but wisdom, the strength to smile with unshakable acceptance at all that has been and all that will be. From the woman who once dictated cold lists through lawyers and notaries of who would inherit which estate, I became a seeker of hearts that would treasure the few memories I had left to give. I discovered that true inheritance is not transferred in deeds and registries, but in bonds woven with love and gentleness. After leaving behind the material world where my children thought I would be remembered only through lifeless buildings and numbers, I felt peace in knowing that my truest legacy would live on in something simple. A verse of poetry I once cherished, echoing in the voice of a friend, resounding within these walls. At the moment when I stripped from my soul every desire to avenge the pain they caused me, and every wish to leave behind a tale of bitterness, I realized the greatest lesson one can give is sometimes not revenge, but the unexpected mercy freely offered in the face of cruelty. All my life, I had tried to be the heroine of their story, rescuing, shielding, and receiving only ingratitude. At last, I became the heroine of my own, stepping back as a spectator, allowing them to walk their paths, to stumble and to rise on their own. And I saw that this, the freedom to let go, was the hardest but most precious gift a mother can give. And finally, when I felt no regret for the past, no longing for the future, and no attachment to this world, I reached that final moment suspended in pure and simple being. I understood then, death is not a battle won or lost against life, but the soul gently thanking the weary body and slipping quietly into the eternal silence where it belongs. After leaving this world, I now understand that my truest legacy was never the foundation that bore my name, nor the money I left in bank accounts. My real inheritance was the invisible chain of kindness. When the hand of compassion I once extended to another was passed on, wave by wave, from one soul to the next, never ending, never fading. Once, while I still lived, my children chose to forget my voice and my words. But now, even after my passing, to know that the verses I loved will be read aloud, that my spirit will live on in poetry, this proves to me that true immortality is not in the body, but in the traces and memories we leave behind. On the day I gave my children that painful lesson, I believed it was only punishment. Yet in the wise flow of time, I saw that the bitter seed I had planted grew into a noble lesson they would one day pass on to their own children. My plan reached its most sacred and unforeseen purpose. Once, my name was nearly erased, even by my own children. Yet now, to know that this same name had become a mother, a shelter, and a hope for hundreds of strangers who shared my fate, that taught me that our existence belongs not only to those bound by blood, but to every heart we touch. That is what true family means. And so, in the great theater of life when I refused the role of victim and chose instead to write and play my own part. I transformed my story. What began in pain, I ended in love, in mercy, and above all, in a lesson to shine beyond my own years. With that unshakable peace, I smiled at the world one final time. To you who listen to this story, whoever you are, know this. When life shows you its darkest face through betrayal, when you feel you have nothing left to hold on to, that is the very moment you will rise from your own ashes. In the moment you feel weakest, you will find your greatest strength. That is the sacred moment when you choose not to remain a victim of fate, but to become the hero of your own story. Looking back, I now see that no pain was wasted, no tear was meaningless, no struggle was in vain. Every betrayal taught me loyalty, every lie taught me truth. Every loss taught me the value of what remained, and from these contradictions, I reached a single unwavering truth, that a person's true temple is their own conscience. My final word to you is this: the greatest legacy you will leave is not the buildings raised with your money, nor the streets named after you. Your greatest work will be the whisper of kindness that echoes in another's heart long after you are gone, the memory of your mercy, and the unforgotten resonance of your honor. Remember this: life is not simply a game played with the cards you are dealt. It is the art of reshaping the rules, no matter how poor the hand, with your own morals and your own courage. In the end, the winner is not the one with the best cards, but the one who finishes the game with the most honor. Here my story ends. A long road that began in pain and ends in peace. If I have one secret to leave you, it is this: never let others write the script of your life. Take the pen in your own hand and write your ending with the ink of your conscience, with a smile and with honor. Farewell.